¿Who is la víctima?
Ya puedo comenzar.
Okay.
¿Lo puedo decir en inglés?
En inglés.
Okay.
Todo en inglés.
So I grew up like in a really diverse area in Southern California, and like growing up, like all of my friends were like, I had like Latino friends, Asian friends, Black friends, and that was just always like normal to me to have like all kinds of diverse friends. But I feel like when I got here to Berkeley, the first thing I noticed that was like really weird to me was that like everybody kind of like stays to their own like community. And it was kind of like, that was like a culture shock for me because I was like, why don't we all hang out together? Like it was just like really weird to me. And I've noticed that like, I guess people just do that to feel more comfortable. 'Cause even now, like in my time at Berkeley, I feel like I've really connected more with like Latinos, and like I have also kind of gravitated towards my community. So yeah, when I first got here, that was definitely like a culture shock to me because I wasn't used to it.
Becky?
I think for me, it was kind of different. I grew up in Glendale, so there's like predominantly two races, which is like Armenian and a lot of Koreans, specifically in like La Crescenta, the part of Glendale that I grew up in. So I had never really been surrounded by the Latino community besides like obviously my family. I have a really big family. And so also just even applying to school, I think being in a school where like, you know, like obviously stereotypes are never good to like listen to and fall into, but I just feel like all throughout school it was a very competitive high school because of like the environment that a lot of the kids at home had, you know, being like from, you know, the typical like, I don't want to like say stereotypes, but the typical like Asian like parents like very pushing on their kids to be super successful and the best grades and 10 APs every year, all that. My parents obviously like pushed me to work hard and to do extracurriculars and take APs, but never to that level. So I never considered myself to be like the smartest person in class or the person that would go to like a super amazing university or anything like that. Like I almost didn't even apply to Berkeley when I was filling out the UC app because I was like, not to cut myself short, but sell myself short, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to get into Berkeley. Like, why would I apply there? But then when you're just like clicking the boxes, I was like, okay, you know, I'll just click it. I mean, we get like 5 free ones anyways. So I did it, and I wasn't expecting anything of it. I was just hoping for like any UC in Southern California, really. And then I ended up, you know, getting into Berkeley and not really getting into like the ones in SoCal that I wanted to. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, you know, just randomly clicking that box, because if I didn't, then I don't know where I would have gone to school. And then, you know, getting here, similar thing. I feel like everyone just kind of like hides away in their own little things. But I feel like I found myself in places where, again, I was kind of the outlier. Like a typical one is like Greek life. It's obviously predominantly white, even though Berkeley is like super progressive. I feel like Greek life especially really holds on to its roots. And, you know, so it's kind of like still the outlier there. And then even in like, I joined like a pre-health fraternity, and there it's like, again, predominantly Asian. Like I would say there's probably 5 Latinx people, if that, in the whole organization. So I think just finding this project was kind of like very refreshing and something that I hadn't experienced before. Like just a place where it's like just, you know, Latinx people and just a community that focuses on that. I never had that experience, so it's been really nice and very special to learn about and experience.
Yeah, I grew up in Miami, Florida. So I had an experience where a lot of my friends were also coming from a lot of diverse places, but also everyone I knew was Hispanic. And most of my friends were Cuban. Like in Miami, like even like on the census, like there's a difference between like being a white Hispanic and being like a person of color and being Hispanic. And I always just kind of like lumped everything together as like, oh, we're like all Hispanic. And like between my friends and I, like there were subtle differences, but there wasn't anything that distinct. And that when I came to Berkeley, it was very different for me because I feel like, especially like within the Chicano population, it's very important to be not only Hispanic and like your culture and your linguistics, but also like being of a certain color and like showing off your pride. And so it was also a strength for me because I was like, oh man, like I'm Hispanic, but like I'm not Hispanic here. And I didn't really even know anyone who was Hispanic. And like I'd meet people and like instinctually I'd be like, oh yeah, you're Hispanic, you're Latino. But then I'd find out like they're not. And so that was also kind of weird because I was like, I had to like wrap my head around the fact that like not everyone is Hispanic, which is like very weird. But yeah, coming here was really awesome. I found that the cultures between Miami and like the Latinos in California are very different. And I think that there's a big emphasis here on not only struggle, but hope, and like spirituality. And that's something that I really gravitated towards because in my own family, like being spiritual is being like a strict Catholic, more conservative. Whereas I feel like here being spiritual is like being progressive and kind of like fighting for each other, even if you're not necessarily Mexican, but they're from like you're Puerto Rican or you're Dominican or El Salvadorian. And so that was really cool to experience too. And I think I'm going to take a lot of this back to where I was. So very grateful.
Nice.
Okay. I'm also from SoCal, and I would say that where I'm from, there was a lot of diversity in my specific high school. I know that wasn't the case for some other ones around me, but I feel like growing up over there, I was still in a really tight box, I felt like, and like I feel like coming over here was so overwhelming and stressful because it was so, I don't know, it just opened up so many different perspectives and stuff that I wasn't used to. Because when I was back over there, like I fell into the the extracurricular, because I feel like a lot of the Latinx population at my high school wasn't really involved in a ton of the things I was involved in. Because I was typical like ASB kid, like like senior VP, like friends of a bunch of the kids in the IB program, which is predominantly Asian. And so I kind of just followed the crowd. Like when I saw all of them applying to colleges, like yeah, I also was like, I went along with it because like that's what all my other friends were talking about. But I'm gonna be honest, I had never really heard about Berkeley, like, even before my senior year, because, like, I didn't really know many UCs outside of, like, Irvine, because Irvine, like, that's or Riverside, because, I mean, that's really close to my house. But, like, when I got in, it, like, I feel like, because I also, one big reason why I gravitated towards, like, people not Latinx is because I feel like I grew up, like, a very heavy No Sabo kid. And like, so even in my few experiences going to Mexico, my parents' hometown, when I was younger, like, I would sometimes feel like made fun of or left like on the outs because I didn't know Spanish growing up, and because I just never really learned it because I was like, I was mostly at school, like my parents worked full time. My two older sisters were, that's a huge age gap. It's like 12 years older, like, so I always felt like kind of like an only child in a sense. And so I wasn't really confident in the Latinx community, but when I came up here, I guess it was just, like you said, like a lot of people tended to stick to their own groups, and because I had never been part of the Latinx group, I really or any like Hispanic friends, like I really struggled to kind of like find my place, and I felt like I wasn't I considered a ton of Hispanic orgs like that, but like I would always get too scared of reliving like the same experiences when I was younger. And so, like, it was really confusing. I also, I tried to Greek life out, and I also found it was very predominantly white, and I just feel like I couldn't relate to them. And even in my pre-health frat as well, like, I know there's only, like, a max of, like, well, like, there's a max of, like, 3 Mexicans, and so, like, it was very isolating, but I think joining the project and, here, like, just opened up a whole new world, and kind of, like, over time, especially because I've been able to practice my Spanish so much more than I did back home, like, it's really opened up, like, my eyes a lot about how much there is to learn about my culture, and I, like, really appreciate being able to learn about it, because I felt like I was always too scared to, and too, like, I was too embarrassed, you know, and like I just felt like I couldn't be proud of myself. And it's so different seeing people who are so proud of their culture here, you know.
Can you tolerate a little bit? Sí. Ya. Perfect.
¿Está bien si lo digo en español?
Sí, como quieras.
Sabes, me siento un poco más cómoda en español, pero es mi primer idioma, el español. Yo soy de Guatemala. Hace unos años me fui a vivir a Los Ángeles con mi familia. La verdad siempre fue, o en los años de high school, siempre, y en college, porque fui a un community college primero, siempre fue como que estuve encerrada en mi burbuja y nunca me separé de mi familia. Entonces, siempre como que eran mi zona segura y tenía mis amigos, todos mis amigos hablaban español. Siempre en la high school los encontramos conforme fuimos llegando y la verdad siempre sentí como que sí tenía ahí mi zona segura y no quería salir de eso. Entonces cuando estaba aplicando como universidades, sí estaba buscando como las más cercanas a mi casa, pero estaba buscando también como las mejores universidades como estudiante de pre-med y pues apliqué a Berkeley y luego que me aceptaron y también a UCLA. La verdad originalmente quería ir a UCLA y ya que tenía las dos opciones ya me dejó pensando, ya no estaba tan segura y decidí venir para acá para salir de mi zona de confort porque siempre era lo mismo, eran las mismas personas, mi familia. En mi familia, la verdad, en mi casa no tenía mucho tiempo para estudiar porque mi mamá siempre trabajó mucho. Entonces yo hacía todo en mi familia, todo en mi casa y sentía que necesitaba como darme ese espacio a mí y como conocer un poco el mundo, como abrir mis ojos, la verdad. Y fue diferente para mí porque siempre fue como que siempre estuve rodeada de hispanos y aquí, o sea, hay muchas culturas, hay como todo es muy diferente, la verdad. Todas las personas siento que piensan muy distinto y pues ha sido muy bueno para mí porque siento que he tenido como perspectivas muy diferentes sobre la vida, como que por fin siento que he abierto mis ojos a diferentes cosas que, o sea, nunca había experimentado. La verdad al principio fue intimidante porque obviamente ya no estaba acostumbrada a estar así rodeada de distintas personas y todo, pero ha sido muy bueno para mí, la verdad. Siento que me ha podido como crear diferentes puntos de vista que antes no tenía. He aprendido mucho de distintas personas, de distintas culturas y la verdad me ha gustado mucho haber venido para acá.
Bueno, normalmente Sofía iba haciendo preguntas. Ella misma iba contestando la primera pregunta y todo el mundo la seguía, pero como no tenemos ese esquema, entonces voy a permitirme hacer las otras dos preguntas. La primera pregunta tiene que ver cómo fue su adaptación, bueno, brevemente, cómo fue cuando vinieron aquí a hacer la entrevista, cómo decidieron trabajar aquí, porque se quedaron. La otra es cómo fue su adaptación y si alguna vez se toparon con un tipo de discriminación, algo que no necesariamente tiene que ser una cosa violenta, pero algo que le recuerda siempre que vienen de otro nivel y ese siempre hay gente, y parece mentira, algunas veces algunos de los otros estudiantes hablaron de eso muy espontáneamente, pero yo estoy guiándome por lo que ellos dijeron. Y cómo ustedes creen que lo que han hecho aquí les ayuda, son tres preguntas, les ayuda a lograr las metas que se han puesto como en sus estudios. ¿Cómo esto se alinea con lo que han hecho con su vida, con lo que quieren hacer?
Should we just go in circle again, I guess? I think for me, one of, like, when she said, like, an experience of, like, discrimination, the first thing that comes to my mind is when I was a freshman, I took Chem 1A lab, and my group we had to split into groups of 4, and I was in a group with 3 Asian men, and I was the only girl. And I remember we were doing some experiment and we were kind of running out of time. And they told me like, oh, how about we do the calculations and you go start washing the dishes? And that to me was like so like cliche, like sexist. And I was like, wow, they're really telling me to wash the dishes. So like that definitely like in my first year here, I really felt like I didn't belong a lot because I was like, oh, they don't think I'm smart enough to do the math. They want me to just go like do the cleaning. so that they can take charge of that. So really that kind of like made me feel like I was like, it gave me imposter syndrome, kind of like, do I really belong here? Like, how did I get here? But I feel like definitely what helped me, kind of going back to the other questions, was like connecting with my community. Like I joined CHE, which is Comunidad for Health Equity, and through that club I met a lot of people that were going through the same experiences, that felt the same way, and that actually inspired me to, my major is integrated biology, but that actually like inspired me to pursue a minor in Chicano Latino studies. And I feel like that has literally changed my perspective on like why I want to be a doctor and like what I want to do as a doctor. So I'm really thankful that I chose to do that, because before I was kind of just like, oh, like I need to do research, like I need to be in a laboratory and I need to be doing that kind of research. But after like being a part of the Chicano department, I've really like gravitated more to this type of work. And I actually became part of this program like mid last semester because I met Daphne. I'm not sure if she's still in the program, but
She graduated already.
yes. Yeah, so I met Daphne and we were kind of talking about these different like ways to contribute and be a part of like research that has to do with the Chicano community. And she was like, oh, well, I'm a part of this URAP program. And I was really like, when she was explaining what the work that you guys were doing, I was like, wow, that literally sounds like something that's perfect for me. And that's like the kind of research that I would want to do. So I'm really thankful that I met her and that she introduced me to this program. And then, yeah, I just feel like a lot of my perspective has changed from when I first got here to now I'm a senior. I feel like my perspective on a lot of things have changed, and I'm really passionate about doing like this kind of work, and I'm glad that I chose to do this instead of just being in a lab and kind of fitting that like pre-med mold. So.
Ok. ¿Qué hice? Bueno, después.
I think for me, I think being someone who's a little bit like, I guess, racially ambiguous, like typically when people first meet me, they either immediately know that I'm some sort of Latina, or they think that like they have no idea. They think I'm like a mix of like Asian and white. Sometimes they think I'm like Armenian or Persian. So it's very, I feel like, hit or miss. So I think in terms of discrimination, I've been very fortunate to not personally have to like experience it or suffer from it. But my brother, on the other hand, even though we have the same mom and dad, we look very different. And he looks a lot more like typically, I guess Mexican, like browner complexion, he looks a lot more like my mom's side of the family that is like, a little bit darker, and you can obviously tell that they're some sort of Latino or Mexican. And, growing up in the same environment, like same parents, same everything, I think we had very different experiences because of our outward complexions. And so he's 3 years older than me. He's also pre-med. He's about to go to medical school in August. But growing up, we like had friends, and, my mom was the one that was like a stay-at-home mom. She was like super involved in our growing up, and like PTA mom, everything. She was always at school. And one day she was at school, like, I don't know what she was doing, but she was at our school, and she overheard one of like my brother's friends and his mom having a conversation. And he was like, I don't remember what necessarily they were talking about, but he was like mentioning something about like, oh, like David, who's my brother, is doing this thing, like I think like I want to join it or whatever. And his mom was like, oh no, like you don't want to be like him, like I like I'll take you to like this, like I'll teach you like what you need to be, because like you don't want to be like them. And then my mom was like, well, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean? Like he shouldn't be like my son, like when like they're the same age, they like the same things, they were both soccer like all this stuff. And it obviously, I think, had a little bit to do with like, the way that he looks. She looked at him and she would never assume like, oh yeah, he's gonna be successful, like he'll be able to like attain his dreams, like become a doctor. Like I don't know, it's just kind of like a implicit bias, I think that's what it's called. And so when my mom told me that story, I think it really shifted my perspective, because I just don't think that I would ever have experienced what he has experienced simply because of my lighter complexion, which is like a crazy thing to think about. But then joining this project, I think I was also, being pre-med, you want to join some sort of research. Like, well, especially like I was really eager last year, my sophomore year, like I just really wanted to get my hands on something. And I applied to so many labs and like it just didn't seem to stick. Like I would go to the interviews and like I just didn't know what to say, because like I think they could tell like A, I maybe didn't really know what I was talking about, and B, like it wasn't something that I was like genuinely interested in. Like I just wanted the research, not necessarily like that project. But then when I found this one and I like did my little application and I came to the interview, I think it was like something like I actually had an opinion on. I actually like seemed interested about, because I really was. And like I had done maybe a little bit of, I guess, like public health work like in high school, like working at a free clinic and learning about like what the volunteer doctors had to say about accessibility to healthcare and everything. And I think just that first step of like learning what public health meant and like the limited access to healthcare that a lot of Latinos face, when I found this project, I was like, it was like the perfect puzzles like coming together. And so it just felt right since the moment I read the application. And I think that's kind of like what helped me get to be able to be part of the project. And then from there, it's just flourished into something super great. And I'm very thankful to be part of it.
Yeah, I think like your experience and mine are pretty similar, actually. My brother like is also a little darker. His hair is like much curlier than my own. He's 7 years older than me. He works in DC, and he said that like at some of the places when he was first trying to get a job to or like even in internships, they would tell him like, oh, like you can't have your hair like that, like you should shave your hair, or like you should use gel to like pull it all the way back and make it look straight. And so for a while, like he would always like keep his hair like matted, and it looked really awful. And then only now has he been starting to like use the right products and kind of like make it like, I don't know, looking better. But I think like since my mom is light skinned and like she had a lot of trouble growing up, like I don't think she would always like respond to her parents in English. And like she really wanted to be like your all-American girl and like get like the American dream and all of that. And so especially since my dad's side of the family, like they're French. So my mom learned French, and like it's just been like I wasn't really exposed to like my own culture growing up, or not that often. Or when I was, it was like only in like family outings, and then like so I never even grew up speaking Spanish. And my mom didn't speak Spanish to me. But then and like she always warned me about those kinds of things. Like she'd say like, oh, like be careful with your hair, like don't wear these certain things, like don't speak like that, because sometimes like growing up, like you do like the whole like pero like this, and she'd be like, you don't even know Spanish, like don't even like try to act like that, because then people will start thinking bad things about you. I would wear like my like red lipstick and like hoops when I was in middle school, and she would be like, no, like you can't do that, like you're gonna think you're una chonga or something like that. And so like I kind of had like this hate-love relationship with my culture until I got here. And then I was like, I kind of realized like how badly I missed it, and like how badly I wanted to relate to this side of me. And so it's been really amazing because, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the community here is really awesome. Like I started taking Spanish classes. So I feel like I can understand a lot more. And then like I started taking salsa lessons here. And even when I go back home now, like I'll tell all of this stuff to my brother. And then he started taking salsa lessons too. And he also started learning Spanish. So like it's fun now because we can like go and interact with like all of our Cuban family members. And they grew up like knowing us as like, oh, like they're the white side of the family. But now they're kind of like being more open and accepting towards us, which is really awesome. And like it's just great to see like how like within my own family, like we can kind of like heal and like deal with the stuff that we kind of didn't want to deal with before. So yeah.
I mean, like I mentioned, I never even knew what Berkeley was until like I had already submitted my applications, and so I think I already wasn't prepared. Like the fact that it wasn't even on my radar made me feel like more scared coming up here for the first time. And the first time I came up here, I was with my older sister and like her two friends, and all three of us were Hispanics, and it was just, I will say, it was a very intimidating first trip up to Berkeley, because they tried one food place that seemed to be like a local like Asian owned business, and I remember them coming back to the hotel room after like 15 minutes after leaving to go get served, like to go to the restaurant that they wanted to try, and just telling us that like when they had been sat down, like they were very, like the staff there were very snappy with them. And I'm not sure if it had to do with their color of their skin, because they are more dark, like they felt out of place already when they went to that restaurant, because they were the only Hispanics there in that entire busy restaurant. And so that was already a bad experience. And I remember the next day we wanted to go somewhere Hispanic for a change, to kind of just like try to find me a place where I can feel like connected to back home, connected to my family. And, I feel like there's not that much good Hispanic food up here. So when we went to this place, I remember there was two, I assume Berkeley students, who walked in to use the restroom or whatnot, but I was in the restroom, and then when I walked, and I remember when I came out, and the girls, because it was a single-use restroom, when I walked out and I walked past them, my sister told me, Ivan, like, you didn't see it because you walked by them, they're looking at us, but like, those two girls just rolled your eyes at you. And, they were like, and they were both, Asian. So it was very, I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't a very first welcoming impression. And so, like, it just kept on going, like, with Chem 1A, like, in labs, and, like, I kept being paired into groups where I felt, like, less prepared, because I didn't take any AP calculus in high school. I didn't take any AP, like, STEM courses in high school. My chemistry was on Zoom. Like, it was just, I felt so underprepared, because I didn't think I was gonna go pre-health junior year. Like, I didn't know what I was doing until I was applying, like when I had to actually start figuring it out on my own. And so, I remember my first like pre-health, because I came in pre-med, my first pre-med Hispanic friend was Sophia. Sophia was probably the first like other pre-med Hispanic that I met on campus. And it was after like the biology scholars program, like welcome, like big student welcome. And I remember we stood outside of like her dorm building talking for like 2 hours about our experiences. And we realized how similarly we felt, and like, out of place, and like the institution wasn't really friendly to like people who don't come from like specific backgrounds. And I just really connected to her. And then I remember like from there on out, that like it gave me a lot of clarity, that conversation, to hear it said back to me for the first time from someone else. And so I remember before when the new semester started, I knew I wanted to get involved in some form of research also, because you hear so much research, and I came across, this project, and I read the description, and I was actually with my boyfriend when I was reading this description, and he was like, wait, that's you. Wait, that's your interests, right? And so, like, I was like, it felt perfect. And then what's so funny is that the next day after this, like, cause I was unsure if I should apply, cause I didn't know if it was like yet another competitive thing I was going to get rejected from, cause I had been rejected from so much my freshman year, and this was my second year. And this was after I tried really hard to transfer to USC because I felt so out of place, just to be closer to home. Even though I'm sure it would have been the same there, because the class differences. But but I remember Sophia, the day after I found this project, literally sent me the project like application page. I'm like, this is my sign that I should apply. And so I'm really glad I did, because I feel like, I've been able to hear so much inspiring stories that, like, when I'm feeling really hopeless, like, make me feel like it is possible, like, I can push through, you know, every single time that I've, like, considered, like, transferring or considered going back home for, like, weeks. Like, I was just considering going back home, like, a week ago because I was just so overwhelmed. Of course, the flight tickets are too expensive, so that wasn't an option. But, like, you know, it's really nice to be reminded every time I'm here about, like, you know, why I'm doing this and, like, what others have, you know, see what others have done and, like, to motivate me and, like, give me ideas for kind of a sense of direction that I want to go with my future career.
Well, do you got time for another question or you have to go? Well, quick question. Okay. ¿Qué experiencia, qué les ha dado, qué les ha aportado hacer el trabajo aquí? ¿Qué les ha aportado con lo que han escuchado las transcripciones, con lo que han escuchado, con lo que hemos hecho? ¿Qué les ha aportado para su carrera en general? Y whatever you wanted to terminar.
One thing that's been cool for me actually is I'm a medical assistant for a neurologist, and we always get like referrals from La Clínica, and I was always like, oh, that's cool, like it's called like La Clínica, I wonder what that is, and I never really knew about it, and I would just like go on with my work, like getting the referrals from La Clínica. So when you guys were having an event, I was like, oh my gosh, that's really cool, like there's a lot of like deep-rooted history that's like really like this was like a community organization, and it was really like cool to like learn about that. And I wasn't able to attend the event, but when I was formulating questions to ask the I guess the doctors that were there,
The panelista.
yeah, the panelists, yes, it was like I did some research and I was like, wow, like this is really inspiring. Like they really, and the fact that they were UC Berkeley students too was like really like inspiring to me. And it just like kind of again like reinforced like the fact that I really do want to like give back to my community, and that's like my main goal as like a provider, like as a future provider, and just kind of like seeing that there are those spaces for like my community is like refreshing, because I feel like a lot of times like in like the healthcare system, like Latinos really don't have a place there. And like even for like me personally, like I used to have to go to like my grandma's doctor's appointments with her, and I would be the translator, and I'd be like, I don't know, no sé cómo decir eso, no sé qué es eso, like, and I would feel really overwhelmed. So I really want to be the doctor that speaks Spanish. I don't want there to have to be a translator in there. I want them to kind of like see themselves in me. And I as of right now, I really want to be a pediatrician. So I'm really excited to like kind of be that inspiration for like the next generation and show them that like this is possible. You can be a doctor. You can be a lawyer, you know, like, so.
I think for me, it's been really like, what's the word? Like, reaffirming, because I think especially last year I was really like doubting whether I could really pursue medicine, and I was like, oh, maybe I should just you know do something else, because this is really hard, and like I don't know if I'll have the grades, I don't know if I'll have this and all the things that you need to to make yourself feel accomplished and like you deserve to get accepted into medical schools and all of that. But I think being able to learn about each person's like past and their history, even if they didn't necessarily become a doctor, because a lot of the people we interview, were like, especially even Lorraine Actang, she worked as like the receptionist for the hospital or the clinic, I mean, but she, like that for her was like her like big goal, which kind of was like parallel to like my big goals. So it's like, and everything that she went through to get there. Like she even talked about like she had a very like troubling, marriage life from a young age and kids from a young age, and a lot of just like battles like in her everyday life that were kind of like holding her back from reaching her fullest potential, yet she was still able to do it. And I feel like every single person that we've interviewed similar like backstories, like a lot of struggle or a lot of doubt, but they're still able to, get to their goal. I think has been, kind of like I said, very reaffirming that like even if you go through like moments of doubt or like struggle, whether it be super big problems or even like little ones, and whatever it is that you feel like is holding you back, you shouldn't, because at the end of the day, like, if you have that goal, like, you should achieve it, and you should just, like, keep pushing through, regardless of the doubts that you might have.
Yeah. For me too, I think that this space was really inspirational, and has been, especially like teachers saying, like, overcoming struggles. But I also think that, for me, like, coming here has taught me a lot about, like, what people have done to serve their own communities. And, like, it's like a common theme of, like, they see that there's, like, a lack of something, and then they work to fill that gap. And, like, I'm extremely grateful that I was able to come here, because I've learned so much about, like, how the medical system works here. And, like I say this all the time, but, like, I've never heard of a free clinic in Miami. Or, like, maybe it's just, like, because that's, like, where I grew up, and, like, I always had access to a doctor. But, like, I just feel like healthcare is so different between Florida and California. And even with, like, basic things, like, in California, they have Medi-Cal. Like, they have their own Medicaid system for California. That's, like, really great. But in Florida, like, we don't have that. We just have, like, the federal minimums. And so, like, every time there's a new law or something, it's always like, well, I always think, like, what's going to happen to my state, and, like, what's going to happen to the people where I'm from. And so I look around and I see, like, how were these systems put in place here in California? Like, how is it that, like, Latinica was able to be founded? And I think it's so inspirational, because it's like, I could do that in my own community. Like, I could be the one to, like, fight for that change. So for my own career, it's been really good, because I think it just made me think a lot about, like, what I can do, like, and, like, what steps I need to take to, like, be someone that has, like, the resources to help other people on, like, the way that, like, the people at La Clinica, or, like, something like Ali, what they do.
I feel like I really want to emphasize Alyssa's point, because I feel like when my mom would, like, she was diagnosed with breast cancer at some point during middle school, and, like, before then, I guess I never really paid attention to, like, because my sisters were always the main translators for a while. Like, eventually what got passed down to me as they got older, and I spent more time with her. But like, a few times when I went with her to the doctor, the sigh of relief I would see when she would have a Hispanic provider, or, like, a Hispanic nurse, like, she'd be like, oh, thank goodness. I've even had that experience in jobs I've worked at, because I worked at a spa at some point over this last summer, and, like, it's a very, like, spas, it's a very specific, like, white dominant, like guess. And I would have, like, a few Hispanics come in, and then they'd be like, oh, thank goodness you speak Spanish, right? And so I just feel like it's really important to be able to do so, because I know growing up, they would always tell me, like, oh, if you're bilingual, you'll get more money. And I was always like, oh, like, it's okay. Like, I don't need it. But I really do see how much of, like, how, like, thankful people are when you're able to, like, when it makes it easier for them to communicate with you. So I feel like this project has helped really a lot so far with, like, being more confident in trying to speak Spanish. But then another thing is, I feel like, being at Berkeley, being an undergrad, a lot of us being, like, pre-med at first, or still are, like, you're very, you feel very inclined to follow a very conventional, like, same path. And, like, I will admit that, like, in high school, I would tell people that history was, like, my least favorite subject. Like, because, I mean, it was the history they were teaching us, it was very, like, textbook, like, early, like, 1800s, like, US, like, not very much of, like, Hispanic people mentioned in the history textbooks. And, so I think that's why it just didn't really catch my attention. But I feel like being in this project has really had me, let me build an appreciation for, like, reading and, like, learning history. And it's actually made it, like, when it's relatable, like, I feel like I actually enjoy doing it. And so, like, I just recently, like, a few weeks ago, I switched to a sociology major, which I feel like is very not, it's not the typical path for, like, pre-health students. But I feel like reading that, like, seeing how many people that we've talked to on the projects, like, have said, like, have followed such different paths from one another, but still, like, achieved such incredible things. Like, I feel like it makes it feel a little more okay to not follow the same path that I think everyone feels like they have to follow at first, you know? So that's been a nice thing. And then also just, you know, the basic skills. Like, I feel like, you know, I'm very not confident in my writing at first, like coming in, and like, you know, like being able to practice my writing has really shown me that actually, like, it's just, you know, like, it's nice, like, to like share my authentic voice, you know, like not feel like constrained by like, you know, a rubric or something, you know, and like, so it's been, I really appreciated opportunities to write so far. Yeah.